Welcome back. Welcome back. My conversation with Michael Caine a fortnight ago was so interesting because he's such a joy that, as you remember, we completely ran out of time. But we carried on talking, and so here comes Michael Caine, part 2, where we picked up our conversation covering his extraordinary career. When was the main moment you made your transition from young leading man to great character actor, as it were?
Educating Rita.
Yeah.
I put on a great big fat stomach, which wasn't very difficult, and I grew a beard. I'd gone through a stage where, you go through that stage where, like the first instance, guy sent me a script, and I sent it back, and I said, it's a lovely script, but I don't want to do the part, it's too small. And he sent me back a note, he said, you're not supposed to read the lover, you're supposed to play the father. I'd naturally read the lover, I thought this is not very big, but the father was the lead. Then I went, uh-oh, rushed into the bathroom and looked in the mirror and went, uh-oh again. And then you go in, and then I sort of did that, and then I did a series of pictures, you know, where nobody knew what to do with me, and they were all rather terrible. So I gave up, and I sort of retired, and I went into the restaurant business.
Very successfully.
Well, very successfully, I must say. And then I wrote my autobiography, which took me 2 years, and then I sort of goofed off. I bought a place in Miami. I spent the winters in, and I was having a great time, just goofing off, and I had money from the restaurants and everything, so I wasn't worried. And they were sending me these crap scripts that I didn't want to do. And then one day, Jack Nicholson turned up. Jack. Mm. And I'd known him for years, but we never worked together, and I love Jack Nicholson. And he turned up and said, listen, we're doing this movie, Blood and Wine. You're already here. Play the other guy. So I said yes, and it was Jack who brought me back into the business. I was really disenchanted with it. But working with Jack was an incredible experience. To me, I think he is the greatest movie actor of all our generations. I think he's wonderful.
And who was the person who gave you the best advice for your career, or your life, indeed? Tony Curtis gave you good advice about giving up smoking, didn't he? But
Tony Curtis, yeah. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and I was in a party, and I'd put my cigarettes away, and I was standing by a fireplace, actually, smoking. And Tony Curtis, who I'd never met, came up, and he put his hand in my pocket, and he took the cigarettes out and threw them in the fire. He said, you shouldn't be doing that. And I went, no, I shouldn't. And I threw my cigarette in the fire. And 2 weeks later, he was caught at Heathrow with marijuana on him. So he was smoking marijuana. He was stopping me smoking Gauloises, which smelt like marijuana, actually.
And you said...
John Wayne gave me some good advice.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he said, what do you got to do, Michael? He said, talk low, talk slow, and don't say too much. I then made a series of very fast-talking pictures with a high voice.
Yeah. And then you gave advice that actors shouldn't blink.
Oh yeah. If you're trying to hold a strong emotion, you shouldn't blink. People in real life, when they are in a shock situation, if you want to really watch how to do film acting, you should watch newsreels, and you see people. And if you're telling somebody something serious, they do not blink. They're not movie actors who've read my advice about that. They do not blink, and they hold your eyes, listening intently. And if you blink, you break it. I'll blink now. Yeah. Now it's broken it. Yeah. And also to choose an eye. Where there's that camera's on there. Yep. Right? I'll tell you, this is choosing an eye. If I look at you with this eye there, this eye is over here, right? We're still talking. But if I change eyes, I look at you with this eye to there, that eye is in the camera.
Right.
That's the best trick that I've taught actors. They all like that one.
Really?
Yeah. I met Jim Carrey the other day. The first thing he said to me, he said, look, I've got the correct eye, look. And I knew he'd seen the video, you know, because there is a video of it. I'm not trying to sell a video, but there is.
Yes, your masterclass, in fact. And you said once recently, most of my dreams have come true, which is great to be able to say.
Yeah.
What ones happened?
To be 105. I love living, you know. I just want to live forever. Yeah. I tell you one dream, a practical dream that never came true for me and won't. I always wanted my own airplane. You know, I have a lot of very rich friends, obviously, and I fly in airplanes. And that's the only time I ever get jealous, when people have their own airplane. You know, because it's so fantastic to fly in a private plane. I love doing that. That's the only one. Other than that, I'm terribly, terribly happy.
You said in an awards ceremony in 2000 that you'd often felt you were on the outside or an outsider. Was that just in the early days, or outsider in the country?
Yeah, I'd always been an outsider, because I came into the theatre at a time when my accent was wrong and everything. And then when I went into movies, I was reviewed in movies from a class point of view, you know, and there was always that thing which I noticed, which is very, very subtle in this country. And I literally didn't feel accepted for a long, long while. You know, that was at the speech when they gave me the BAFTA Fellowship.
And that actually, when I started, they didn't say which class, but they called me classless.
Yes, exactly.
Halfway between the two.
Yeah, but I'd done so much about class, and I retained the Cockney accent and everything deliberately, in order to encourage others. You know, that if I ever made a success, maybe they would see that and not worry about it. And it did happen, you know. Even people have even said so. You know.
And what about the time capsule? I mean, we've talked about some of your films, although in fact there is a total of 132 Michael Caine films. I read.
But I did a lot of little pictures where I only had small parts, and on the internet they include. I mean, I don't even know the titles they include on the internet. There's probably 70 or 80 movies where I played the lead, for which I would take responsibility, put it that way.
Right.
I was the lead, and if the picture was no good, it's partly my fault. Yeah, and there's about 70 or 80 of those.
70 or 80 of those.
Yeah.
And you would pick what three to go in the time capsule if there was only room in the time capsule for 3 Michael Caine movies?
I would pick Alfie, Educated Rita, and The Quiet American.
Very, very good mixture. Yeah.
There you are, you see, because
actually, there's
you get weird reviews in England. You know, this is what used to tick me off. I was like, I saw one review for Alfie. Said Michael Caine is very good in Alfie, but then of course he is doing a Cockney accent, so it's easy for him. As though all Cockneys were exactly the same.
Yes,
you know, so
yes.
if you had an accent. You know, it was like all African people can dance or something, you know.
Well, actually, in a way, there's more than 132 or 1780, because several of your films just recently have been remade. I mean, you remade Sleuth.
I remade Sleuth, and I played a little part in Get Carter that Sly Stallone remade.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my view of they were all successful pictures. My view of remaking pictures is you should remake flops, and then you can only be better.
Yeah.
I did a picture called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which was a remake of a picture that Marlon Brando and David Niven made, which was a terrible flop and wasn't very funny at all. And they used that plot of that picture, and they wrote it, but they renamed it Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So we had nowhere to go but up, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that was very good.
Yeah, you've got to remake flops. No, don't remake successful pictures.
Yeah. That's a worrying thought, because I'm involved in doing this remake of The Dam Busters. That was a perfect film in its way, but modernised.
Weren't there extra scientific things with that thing that I won't go into it, but that you surely included the stories that, you know, all those stories came out later. You know?
Yeah, because typical of British Secret Service and so on, when they made the original film, 11 years after the war, there was still a lot of it that was highly secret and classified. You know? Hey, it's a delight to have you with us here, Michael. It's
Thank
a joy.
You, David.
Times rush by when you're here.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't want to bore.
I don't think you ever will.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Michael Caine.